The emergence of COVID-19 has forced the legal industry to rapidly undergo a fundamental transformation. I'm Jack Newton, CEO and co-founder of Clio, the world's leading cloud-based legal software provider. In each episode of Daily Matters, we'll explore what this new normal means for law firms, how legal professionals can find success while working remotely, and how lawyers can best serve their clients during this unprecedented situation. Today, we welcome Kevin O'Keefe to the show. Kevin is the CEO and founder of LexBlog, a network of over 25,000 bloggers providing real-time news and insights powered by the legal community. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jake. It's my pleasure and honor.
So Kevin, first and foremost, how are you and your family doing? How are things in Seattle, which is obviously one of the earlier epicenters of the broader pandemic outbreak?
Yeah, well, as far as here, it's me and my yellow lab. my 5 kids are older.
Your running partner?
Yeah. So he just completed a year straight last week. Yeah, my kids, are older, so they really don't want to come by me. So I haven't seen face to face 4 of the 5 kids in over a month, and they all live within 10 minutes of here. One daughter and her fiance have come by a couple times, that type of thing. So it's it's different. It's different that way. I think what they're thinking is that they don't want to infect their old man, and it's in a higher age group and do something to him. So it's strange. I think Seattle, I think from the national perspective, it was labeled the epicenter because we had the first death. Now, primarily that came, it came from a nursing home, which nursing homes are lethal. I mean, you put the virus into a nursing home, and it's just a matter of how many people are going to die, not whether somebody's going to die. So that just exploded on national news. But even though Seattle had a hospital put up in an event center next to the football stadium, it was never occupied and taken down. There's never been a day where there hasn't been enough hospital rooms, ICU units, and our emergency rooms have never been more crowded than they would on any average night. So the community certainly is impacted like every other significant community in the country. But I don't know that it's been worse than other communities, and certainly a lot less than cities on the East Coast, and how dire it's become.
Agree.
Out there. Yeah.
And how are you managing that social distancing with your kids? Are you jumping on more Zoom calls or anything along those lines to stay connected?
We do some Zoom. Our family has always had a text with everybody on it forever. So as soon as they say, somebody's going to go to a bar and play pinball, then somebody else chimes in, or this or that. I was kind of dumbfounded the other night that we're all on a Zoom call. It lasted a long time. I start to jump off it, and I'm sitting there working in my living room on something, and they just continued to talk to each other like, the tightest best friends in the world for the next hour about everything, which is stunning to me. To have kids that are, now 27 to 33, to all be their best friends, all living in the same large city. And they seem to be coping pretty well, just jumping on and just talking. Then you talk with, relatives back in Wisconsin doing the same thing, and putting them on Zoom, that type of thing. They can call their grandfather and put them on Zoom.
I've had kind of
about all this.
A cool and similar experience where much of my family, as you know, I'm based in Vancouver. Much of my extended family is based in Edmonton, Alberta, which is one province over from us, a couple thousand miles away on the other side of the Rockies. So we normally only see them in person, 2 or 3 times a year at the most. And what's been cool over this COVID-19 experience is we've been doing a lot more Zoom calls, a lot more video calls with the whole family. My parents dialed in, and my 2 brothers and their families dialed in. The younger cousins will jump into the calls and joke and we've even set up the iPad with the Zoom call just for the cousins who are kind of ranged between 7 and 11 years old, of age, and they all just have a great time together. So it's a pretty cool it's a pretty cool experience for me to see, to actually, bizarrely and paradoxically feeling, more connected to my family in Alberta over this crisis than I did beforehand.
Yeah, it could be. I'm kind of leaning on my daughter to proceed with her wedding in June, and we'll just do it, on Zoom. And the federal courthouse is across the street,
Right,
the old one.
right.
I said, we'll just do it on the steps on a Saturday afternoon with about 6 or 12 of, the 10 immediate family, and we'll Zoom it across the country.
Yeah, just be spaced out 6 feet apart.
Yeah, I mean, it might be something. She hasn't said no yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a new reality. And I think the difficulty right now is if you're punting from June, when are you punting until? Because there's so much uncertainty about when we get on the other side of this. And maybe to pivot to the next question,
Yeah.
Kevin, I'm curious, what's most on your mind right now?
Sometimes it comes back to me or back to the company, but I think even when I start to think about that, I really think about, we're in the States, so we immediately think of the United States economy and the people in the country, because I'm not as familiar, with other nations and communities and their economy. But I don't think that, my gut's telling me that we are not anticipating how bad it's going to be. Somehow we're thinking that, this is going to get phased lifted, starting in June or something. And somehow life will be remotely similar. And I don't think so. And if it doesn't get remotely similar, then the economy we're going to be crushed, because we're a consumer-driven economy. You've probably seen it in Vancouver, but our stores are boarded up. Will people go back to buying at those stores? I don't know. Will they walk into the Gap or Banana Republic or some of the other stores, around Nordstrom's downtown Seattle? Will people fly, for, until sometime, at the end of 2021 or something? That's a long time. The hotels and the restaurants, what will this economy, look like? How long can the United States continue to just send out money? That's a tough situation. So there's be a lot of smart people figuring this thing out. Heard this morning that after we locked down the whole, I think maybe it's just New York, maybe it was the United States, but we reduced the spread to only 0.9, meaning if you get it, Jack, you're going to spread it to 0.9 other people.
Right.
Before we locked down, it was going like 1 to 2. That's a bad deal, because then the next 2 spread it to 2, and we got something going on. We got to keep it down to about 1.2 for this to work. So the margin for error is only between 0.9 and 1.2, which means that I can't imagine, the governors and the federal government in the States is going to open up things until we get some type of great treatment or vaccine. Now, the faith you have, the optimistic side, is innovation and technology. We're going to do more in the next year than we've probably done in the previous ever. For the speed at which we can test vaccines, my daughter texted, all of us yesterday and said, hey, one of her managers just got pulled off her team to go over to the vaccine team.
Wow.
because Amazon's going to be working on vaccines, and they're going to build their first lab. I mean, how many labs will Jeff Bezos build? How many scientists will Jeff Bezos rob from other institutions? With something to say, how would you like to be something that could be bigger than AWS?
Mm-hmm.
Because we want to build something that can produce viruses and treatment on this, and then other or to build vaccines, build treatment for this virus and other viruses that are going to come. So
it's
the same way that you guys have done all those things. You had Clio, which maybe revolutionized the way lawyers are approaching how they store things and how they interact with clients. And think how fast this can go now with all the governments in the world investing in something.
Yeah, I think there's going to be an already unprecedented levels of collaboration between governments and different scientific bodies, and I think there's a lot of cause for optimism that we may be able to get to a vaccine, get to some kind of treatment for this disease faster than the 18 to 24 months that's being projected right now. And it seems like increasingly that's our only way out of this mess.
Yeah.
And Kevin, I'm curious, you've been a lawyer for 35 years. You've been in legal tech before it was called legal tech for 20 plus years.
Right.
You've been covering the legal industry, through the .com crash, through the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. Have you ever seen anything like this in your career?
No, I think nobody's seen anything like this before.
Right.
There's just no way, unless we were alive at the Depression or behind the lines in Europe, World War I in the hospitals or around World War II. We just haven't seen anything. And the only thing that is going to hold us up, the government having that parachute for us, that does more than it used to do. But no, it's I mean, you sit here as business owners and you're going, okay, we're on a subscription revenue, and the subscription revenues continue to come in, and people are even buying. But I just keep thinking that can't keep going forever. Now, I'm an optimistic person,
Right?
but I have told my COO, to give me the yellow envelope, the green envelope, the yellow envelope, and the red envelope
Right.
for various financial situations, so that I don't want to worry about it in between. I just want to know what our plan of action is at various levels.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, and I think every business owner needs to be thinking about that scenario, and what was your downside case a month
Right.
ago may all of a sudden look like your best case.
Yeah, you just don't know, and I think there's that natural anxiety in the back of people's minds that normally you're not living with that anxiety. You're still working, you're still doing things, you're still selling, you're still leading a team, but there's something in the back of our mind that throws our focus off. At least it does me, and I've talked to other people that have mentioned the same thing.
So maybe more on that point, Kevin, I'm curious. You've got a really unique vantage point, running this blog network of thousands of lawyers sharing their perspectives and opinions on what's going on with this crisis. Can you tell me what some of your biggest takeaways have been about the crisis and what its impacts on legal will be?
Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, the biggest takeaway is that lawyers are rising to the occasion. They're producing insight and commentary like they never have before. So in the case of lawyers that blog, don't assume that they're being driven by SEO or traffic or anything. The best bloggers blog to help people. So when I go talk to them and say, "Why'd you start a blog?" I wanted to help people. So if you're writing on employment law today, you just can't write enough stuff, because if you're a business owner and you need information, there's so many questions that are coming up. If you're writing on FMLA, it's the same thing. How would you like to write on food safety issues today? You're normally writing on issues that have to do with various foodborne illness. Now we're dealing with problems with meat supply, and we're dealing,
Right.
Those type of things that never came up before. But to watch lawyers rise to the occasion, because who else would cover this? There is nobody else. Nobody else can cover these things. And what impresses me is that if associations come out and say, "Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to put together a body of information so that lawyers will have it or business people will have it," they can't produce that much information.
Right.
We watched the flow of content from the beginning of February just go like the hockey stick growth on the virus. It went like, okay, here's a post, here's another post, okay, here's 3 or 4, okay, here's 50, here's 100, here's 300, all within a month. To watch that. And so all of a sudden to basically say, okay, they're producing 300 posts a day. That's a lot of content. Just on business days, that's 1,500 different posts a day. There's so much insight and commentary. We're trying to figure out how do we pattern that? How do we make it presentable in ways that people can use that database of information and then siphon it off to other people? So I think like other companies, and I'm sure like yours, it drives innovation here, because in 5 days we can say, hey, can we identify all the content on the network, no matter its source, that relates to the virus? And then can we present that on another site, whether it's for us or for an organization as it relates to their people? And in 5 days, the guys did it. So that's cool. So that's
the coronavirus legal daily site that you launched.
Yeah, but it also can be sliced for other people. So now we're slicing it for the New York City Bar. So you can say, okay, who are the members of the New York City Bar that are publishing on that? And then what members of the New York City Bar could be given a free spot to publish on the virus by us, so it can go into the New York City Bar site. And then a law firm can do the same thing. Shepherd Mullen did it and said, okay, among all our blogs, among our 30 or 40 publications, there's many people writing on the virus. In fact, everybody. That's all the posted writing on. Well, let's create a Shepherd Mullen publication on the virus. Because what the lawyers want to do oftentimes in the firms, they want to share content from their own firm with their client, so that if they're sharing with a business owner, they're not sharing it from another firm, because it'll look like that their firm has more expertise. They want to share it from their, they want to share it from their partner, whether the partner's in Shanghai or DC, wherever. So if you can take all that content, that lawyer has no idea what they have. But now, 3 days after we showed them that, they said this would be cool to do. They have it, and then they could say, this is pretty neat. We can look up content coming through. We can share it with our clients. And so what the law firms are doing is they're being smart. They have got to connect with people in relationships to establish trust. So you've got to produce insight and commentary on the type of questions that you're already getting, and getting that information out to people in an honest way, authentic way.
And Kevin, you've for a long time blogged at Real Lawyers Have Blogs, and in a recent post you showed this hockey stick exponential curve of posts about COVID-19. If you're a lawyer that is on the front lines, keeping track of the developments that are changing sometimes on an hourly basis, and I think a great example is if you're an employment lawyer, look at how rapidly the landscape is changing on that front, and you haven't been blogging. Is now a good time to start, or is it too late?
No, I was talking to somebody yesterday. I think it was might be the New York City Bar, or even maybe it was just our team. But don't think of it as blogging. Let's go back to like 95, 96. Look at Reddit. People just, if I think, do you want to do a blog? Oh my God, I don't have any time to do a blog. I mean, imagine someone telling somebody want to do a blog, and they got three kids in grade school, and they're being homeschooled, which means the teacher comes in, says the Pledge of Allegiance, and wishes everybody a happy day. You teach your kids all day while you're trying to work from home. It ain't gonna happen. But if I said, here's a list of frequently asked questions on employment law that relate to COVID. Here's 25 of them, and it doesn't matter whether you answer them. If you're in Los Angeles or San Francisco or Sacramento or wherever, Google will match you up with the locale, with the people that are in your area. And if you want, I'll give you the questions. All you got to do is answer them. I'll give you the site for free. I'll give you, or if you don't want a site, we'll just give you something called a spot. So you can put in the information. It'll appear in this site. It's going to get indexed, whatever. But just look at it from the standpoint of that you don't have the opportunity to do the same thing. You just don't, because as you know, 85% of the people think we're relevant to them, meaning as lawyers. So we're only competing for 15% of the market share. What if that market share just got lopped in half? What if it's only 7% coming out of this? So now we got only 7% of the people that think we're the same thing and compete for that 7%. That's not good. So very simple things would be, maybe in the evening, I just have these frequently asked questions. I just answer them. That's it. And then just imagine yourself talking to somebody, across the table at a restaurant or a bar, with some empathy for that. So you don't have to think about writing this big blog. It could just, could you imagine if somebody just started something, Jack, and it said, COVID-19 answers for employers in Edmonton.
Right.
That's it. And then every day they answered 2. Word would get around, and Google would know that there's a lawyer that knows something about employment law in Edmonton that's answering these questions. And that would spread on Facebook. It would be in a publication. The content can get syndicated other places. Just try to think about how you can be helpful, and it doesn't have to be grandiose.
So Kevin, is it as simple as be helpful and you'll build an audience and a following?
Yeah, I think be vulnerable and be helpful. I don't think lawyers appreciate how important being vulnerable is. I mean, that's how I learned to be a lawyer, by not having a clue what I was doing and knowing I could screw something up. I can't screw up a contract or a pleading, or statute of limitations, but I tried cases without ever going to court with a lawyer before. And so when it comes to the internet, there's no severe damage you're going to do. You're dealing with people that are very, very scared, whether they're consumers or business people. Anybody that will care for them, that is real and authentic, they will remember, because you'll build relationships founded on trust, and you'll build relationships founded on emotions. And people remember things when they're in an emotional state like this. So if a lawyer is just willing to answer questions, and I used to tell that to bloggers starting out, and it probably is just as relevant today, even though we've gotten into all the crazy things people try to do. What are the questions that people are asking? And, write it down in a law firm. I mean, to tell you the truth, at Prairie Law and then at LexisNexis, lawyers.com, we went out and found the FAQs. All I had to Google was, a particular issue FAQ. And then I would see them on law firm sites, bar sites, whatever. And I would tell the team, we cannot steal that exact question. And we can certainly not steal the content, but we can certainly take the emphasis of that question, answer that question. And there's probably still content all over, a site that is with Martindale with FAQs that were done years ago. We just created lists, and then those were answered by lawyers. Lawyers can do that today. And I think with the sophistication that Google has, it'll match up the location of where the people are. But be vulnerable, be authentic. It really works.
I think the idea of being vulnerable is one that many lawyers I've spoken to struggle with, and almost view it as a breach of their responsibilities to their clients to be vulnerable in any way. Can you explore that a bit more deeply, and maybe share whether you have the same observation around the psyche of a lawyer?
I think it's around everybody, you tell a team member to be vulnerable. Well, that's easy for you to say because
right.
You're in a leadership position here.
Right.
And I'm trying to prepare my team for, later where they'll be in 10 years from now. Probably not going to be with me. But being vulnerable makes you more valuable to people, because the more vulnerable situations you're in, and the more tough situations you've been in, the more anxious situations you've been in, the bigger challenges you've had personally, the better equipped you are to help people, including your clients, just your life experiences that you've had. They're called attorneys and counselors. There's a counselor component to it, and you better have picked up some opportunities where you became vulnerable. And the internet's all about being vulnerable and being social. I always thought that Canadians had an edge because they were more social. And I think I wrote once, blog like a Canadian, because they were more engaging with people. But I always came to the internet. I didn't know what I was doing, because what the hell was the internet in 1995, right? What's this AOL? And you put in the keyword legal.
Right.
And, all of a sudden, all these people have questions, and you go, wow, Now I just took the position that if I got disbarred because I was breaching competence, or I was saying things, that were affecting somebody in another state, or that had a license, then I was in the wrong profession. But I just thought that, we should be able to answer questions generally to help people. This isn't legal advice; it's just general information. And think of the amount of information that's being passed. It's not just coming from codes and case interpretations for the virus, but we've got city orders, we've got state executive orders that are coming down. What does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean? What does it mean when somebody comes out and says, okay, you have to wear masks and they have to be of this, this quality for this type of thing for your employers? Does it mean you have to supply them? Where do you get them from?
Right.
That's all information that you might be able to gather and get up on a site. And how nice would it be for a lawyer to do that? Now let's go back to Edmonton, where they put it on a site and they also copy and paste it, or maybe they put it at Facebook first and then they copy and paste it to a site. How nice is that? Every day, just to take 45 minutes or an hour and answer a question. And assuming the virus is still going to be going on, we'll still have issues going on. Could be a year or more from now. Imagine doing that even just every weekday. In a month, you'd have 20. 2 months, you'd have 40. 3 months, you'd have 60. So there's 60 bits of information that anybody in Edmonton could Google and find. And who isn't going to remember that lawyer took their time to do that?
Yeah.
And maybe get that information out, not it's on your page at Facebook, because people don't relate. Somebody sends me a notice and says, do you want to like my business page? No, I don't. But if Facebook comes up and says, you might have an interest in being a friend with so-and-so that's a lawyer, then I do like them. So get it on your personal Facebook page so it can circulate around your city, and then put it on we'll give you a place to publish it for free. And you can decide whether you want it to be public interfacing, or whether you want it just stored with the content being syndicated, on LexBlog and other places.
Right. And I think something that many people don't appreciate until they start seeing the dividends pay off in the long term is you invest in creating that content, you invest in creating that goodwill, and that's something that really pays dividends forever. A good piece of content, a high quality answer, that's all going to be compounding interest for you over the next 5-10 years and beyond.
And that it does, but also what compounds the most interest is you as a person. So if I'm out, if I share a piece of information about publishing or syndicating content or whatever, that gets a certain volume of engagement, and from good engagement too. If I get an email from a CMO this morning on something, but if I go up and take a walk and just want to sit in the sun on the cathedral steps and take a picture of me and my dog, looking at the sunset over downtown Seattle, it could be 50 or 100 people look at that, mostly in the business world.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they go, oh, that person has the same, what do they do in the evening to get out? Where do they walk around that I do? So, I think there's a lot of that too. I think lawyers would be, this is the time to be different. And this is not the time to be the same. You have to change. And I think I heard that from one of your interviews with somebody, that you have to do something different. And maybe the time is now to be real, to be a person, because people appreciate real people. Go start to use Facebook. Take pictures of your family in the backyard, having a, sitting outside because you can't go anywhere.
I think it's absolutely. And I think it's actually been a very interesting, common thread through many of my interviews on the show around this need, both an opportunity and a need to be more human and more empathetic and more real in this, in this crisis. And it's maybe an opportunity to experiment where we haven't had that permission or that ability to really try to change and evolve how we're doing things as a profession. And I think you're helping underscore that point. And Kevin, maybe shifting gears slightly, I'm curious, you commented recently on Twitter about the effect the pandemic's having on news publications with that are seeing really stark declines in advertising revenue. We saw just yesterday the LA Times furlough, I think 40 plus staff because its advertising revenue had basically gone to zero. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing from the front lines and what the implications of that drop in spend will have?
Yeah, I mean, it was Saturday, I think, and was out early, out walking, and I looked at my iPhone and noticed that GeekWire here in Seattle just furloughed a bunch of people, and I go, wow, why'd that happen? I'm thinking,
Right.
then immediately the next thing was advertising. That's right. All the events, all the restaurants, everything. GeekWire's lost that advertising. They've lost their revenue. And then you start to see the publications. Then I noticed, I think it was the Buffalo paper or Cleveland paper. Basically, from what the discussion was, this could be the beginning of the end. Do you even come back from this? Pretty stunning, because they were already in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess. I don't know, but there was some. Like Disney's obviously getting killed because you can't make much. I mean, now they have their entertainment, but Netflix is killing them on their entertainment empire. But you're certainly
Bob
not
Iger stepped out just at the right time, didn't he?
Yeah. I'll see you.
Yeah, the poor guy he handed the reins over to was dealt a pretty poor hand.
But there was, and I don't always read all the whole story, but what I was reading is that Disney's going to reinvent itself, and they will not be the same Disney they were ever before.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That's what I started thinking about publishing. What does that mean for publishing? Was this the the straw that broke the camel's back?
Mm-hmm.
What will be the new publishing? Now the only challenge is that if we were to look and say who are the most innovative news publishers in the world, who are the top 5, who's number 1? I don't know. Mark Zuckerberg? I mean, maybe Google. So that's tough. So I think something's going to change. It'll be interesting to see in legal what'll happen. Lawyers lawyers do different things. They'll pour money into trying to get vanity. I think there was one time years ago I was sitting in ALM's office, and I used to stop by and see them all the time. And I just said, somehow I said this idea I have is, I guess, a little bit vanity based. And I go, what do you think all these people are doing? We all work
right.
for vanity. So can you afford that vanity where you're having PR and communications people spend a lot of money to try to get you publicity, when maybe that publicity isn't worth so much at those places anymore, those core publications? Will they be what they are? Can they afford to, how much can they go eat down? And then you have law firms that will produce content and then pay to have people distribute it. Is that all going to be the same? I don't know. You've been around for what, 11 years at Clio?
Yeah, 12.
12. When we hit 15, it was like, how many businesses do I know that are 15 years old that said, we're going to double down on being the same?
Right.
It gets really scary when you think that.
You got to change.
We got to change how you pivot. And so,
well, speaking of vanity, do you have the 20,000 square foot high end AAA office space downtown with the marble lobby and the 20-foot ceilings, right?
Yeah, can you do that? I don't know. There's probably going to be some clients in the United States that seem to appreciate that stuff still. It's going to be hard to know, but the publishing thing is really, really interesting. And I'm intrigued by the model of people that already have a source of revenue. They're like lawyers. They get paid based on their time, or smarter, they would get paid on a subscription. And so if they publish content, they can give it away, because if somebody will syndicate that copy and give them their own site too, they don't need a revenue model for that copy. And there's no way that a legal publication can compete with that, because
and in the absence of advertising dollars, the need for this free content goes through the roof, and the opportunities to get that content syndicated and the opportunities to get reach for that content probably multiply by an order of magnitude.
Yeah, and then for the syndicate, or from my standpoint, what's my revenue model? It's not to license the content; it's to license the technology by which that content can be displayed and it can be distributed. So if I can give you an API so that, and you license that so you can drop this stuff in your database and distribute it how you want to, fine. Or we can give you a SaaS platform on which you can publish the content. So you're licensing a SaaS platform, it just comes loaded with all the content that you need. So that, you'll find out in a couple of years whether this is a good idea or not.
Yeah, but it's a great time to experiment.
I guess. What other choice do we have?
Exactly. Necessity is the mother of invention. Yeah. And maybe shifting, you started to touch on the implications for legal in shifting more fully to that conversation. I'm curious, we're obviously well underway in what we'll look back on, I'm sure, as the most rapid period of technological transformation, as well as practical transformation in how legal services are delivered, probably in the profession's history. And again, you've got a unique and wide-spanning perspective on what's happening in the industry. What's your take? What are you seeing happen at a macro level, and what are you hearing in terms of maybe specific stories around how firms are adapting to this new reality?
I think there's two things going on in large law. There's a couple. I mean, there's a little bit reactionary, that, my God, we got a problem, so we better do something. But some of it is planning. So we can't believe that things are going to go as they are. So we've got to reduce OpEx, which primarily is people, and you're furloughing people. So they're law firms are furloughing people, and they're reducing the draws of people, and they're reducing the salaries, right now. I did talk with a friend that has worked with some very major law firms, two of them, and led some business development efforts at two of them. And I just asked her at the end of the conversation, we were just having kind of social for an hour, and I said, what do you think? What's going to look like at the end of the year? Dramatically different. And she may have used something along the lines of right sizing. This might bring the change. This might bring the change that we needed to have brought before. And I think that they're going to. Who am I to know? I've never worked in one of these organizations. I sit at conferences and listen. I think lawyers should think about new revenue models. I mean, they think about delivering legal services, and they talk about whether there should be an hourly fee or subscription fee, and everything is about delivering legal services. There's other things they can deliver. When I visited Nolo the first time back in probably '96 or something, I couldn't believe the quality of the publications that they had. And I'm thinking, hell, these ought to be sitting in my lobby with people buying them.
Right.
Because they're preparing people for a deposition better than I could. The books were great, and all the lawyers were afraid of them because somehow everybody was going to stop using a lawyer and use Nolo, which is kind of silly. But right. But today we have technology. I mean, you just at CleoCon, you watch some of these startup companies. They're cool things.
Yeah.
Could the lawyers be involved in licensing those? I mean, depending on how many customers you have and how they could use that. Is that a new revenue stream for you? I don't know. There could be different ways that you deliver the outcome as opposed to the time. I don't know, but I think that lawyers ought to be very tight on niches. I think niches are really a golden opportunity right now. So right now you have a name. I was talking to a firm in Houston and New Orleans, not a huge firm, and they were telling me, what their lawyers wanted to do on a particular subject. It's a big subject in Texas. I said, and then I asked one of my team members. I said, "Is there a blog on the pandemic and that particular industry right now?" No. I go, holy shit! I mean, that's
right.
Gold.
There you go. There's your opportunity.
There's your opportunity. And so you're going to, think about how emotionally distraught these business owners are on various types of issues, and the bonds you will make with them over the next 2 years. They'll come to you for everything, including their divorce at that point in time, because they trust you. So you look at your niches. How many industries do we have? Look at all the industries that your lawyers cover, Jack, in Clio. what if each one of them would just say, you know what, I think I'm going to start answering commonly asked questions related to the pandemic for this industry. And the next thing I know, within 6 months or a year, they will be the lawyer in the country on this issue. There was nothing that will prevent them from being on, Canadian broadcasting or in the States on CNN for that particular industry. That niche will never be as good as it is today, because is there anybody walking, around that isn't affected by the pandemic? No, everybody is. And so now you go into a particular industry and say, okay, here it is.
I think the interesting thing about the dynamics that we're seeing evolve here as well is if you go niche and you're in a very small geography, that can be kind of rate limiting in terms of how much business you can generate. But I think what we're also seeing right now is this willingness to work in a highly distributed way, and where you are, where you live, where you're doing your work matters a lot less than it used to. So I think you can go very niche, but then increase your reach to broader geographies, both within your state, but also potentially additional states or even nationwide within that niche.
Those niches always work. I mean, the first lawyer that did fashion law, she does work around the world. I mean, she wasn't limited to her city.
Exactly.
The first lawyer that did cannabis law, she does work all over, and she was not limited to her city. Now, these were people that probably looked at be a little bit strange back then. Well, who needs anything on cannabis law? Who needs anything on fashion law? Never heard of fashion law.
Right.
And those young people did extraordinarily well. And they, if I were to look at those two women, the things that I would, say most about them, very passionate about what they do and very positive about probably life and what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. Kevin, maybe a slightly different perspective facet on the same question. What do you see as being some of the lasting changes and shifts we'll see in the legal industry on the other side of this crisis? And I'm thinking, do we see normalization of a work from home environment? Do we see the idea of distributed work being more widely accepted in law firms? Do we see a pivot, away from the hourly bill model as you referred to earlier? Do we see a right sizing of the industry? I'd love for you to walk through what some of your predictions might be on that front.
Yeah, I'm probably not as optimistic. Now that I've been in this for so long, probably about a 10% difference from whatever it is today. There'll be some committees.
Also happy to hear a sobering perspective. No need for optimism.
It was, as you talked about that, I was imagining, we're going to announce a committee or a subcommittee, and then we'll have a committee, and then,
right.
But we won't be able to have the meeting of the committee until we can go to resort and meet. I shouldn't be. But yeah, I mean that.
Yeah, I think it's a fair concern. I mean, can law firms be agile enough to navigate this crisis? Maybe the real question.
The one thing I do wonder is could this be the time when things really happen? So, you've been to enough conferences where people talk about change, but you've been going to those for 12 years,
right?
And they're still talking primarily about
kind of the same message. Yeah,
the cloud was going to happen sooner or later. I mean, hell, I was using Salesforce when I started LexBlog. And it had cloud on the top, no software. I didn't know what that meant. All I knew is I logged in and all our stuff was there. And it's all the same stuff. People talk about the same stuff. What are we going to do? And we're going to give greater access to people that market to be able to deliver work to the lawyers and participate in the fees. And some states are doing this. And some revolutionary change. You hear, hey, out in Utah, they're doing something. And you're going, well, that isn't, it's a small place. It's not a major change. I'll bet that in the science and in the medicine, they're going to make major change because they have to. I mean, look at what Amazon did. It's in the space. If Amazon is really in the space, things are not going to be the same anymore. They're just because they're going to drive that. And you got Bill Gates driving change. How brilliant guys saying what has to be done, and people are going to get it done. So here we are in the law, and we're going to say, well, we can have some really brilliant people, we can have innovation, we can have technology, but we can't do that. Maybe this is the time, because you've also been at conferences where people say, well, we do pay attention to the rules of the bar associations and whatnot, but understand we're a lot like when we pay taxes. We try to pay as little taxes as possible. So we navigate what we can do and what we not do under the rules. Maybe this is time we just blow right through that stuff. Just blow through it. I mean, what if people were really delivering access to legal information in new ways through companies that didn't exist before?
Yeah.
Or through models that didn't exist before, where maybe the lawyers work at those companies and make more money than they would make in a private practice. I mean, what if something like that happened? I don't know whether it will. That's the optimistic side. That we can. I've never been I can't say everything I think or I'll get in trouble, but I think sometimes the bars supervising lawyer rules kind of slow things down. And if we put that in the hands of the state, will govern lawyer practices, and then businesses will deliver legal services however they're supposed to be delivered. Maybe there'd be more people that would have what they need at an affordable price. I'm fascinated by the things that Do Not Pay comes out with. It seems like every week. I mean,
yeah,
it was another one this week that he announces he's
a new tool to automatically file for EI claims. I've got Josh Browder on the docket for next week. Looking forward to that conversation. Well,
he knows better
Kevin,
than me, then.
I agree with you, and there's certainly a lot more we could talk about, but we're unfortunately coming up on time, and let's do a part 2 at some point and get a refreshed perspective on where you think we're headed here. And to conclude, Kevin, maybe a parting thought. I would love to hear from you your main message to others, speaking to them either as legal professionals or simply as human beings.
Yeah, I think what's most important is people's families and their health, and we have no control over this thing to some extent, and the worry that we put into it and the anxiety we can put into it is only going to increase. Take us away from what's important. I mean, you got a young family. I've got my kids that are older. So I think it's the health of the family and the family itself that is most important. And just always remember that it's always family, it's always health, and then everything will always work out some way. We don't always know, but it always works out every time.
But it certainly gives you a new perspective on the importance of family and health, and I think that's a terrific note to end on. Well, Kevin, thanks so much for joining us today. It was great chatting with you, and stay healthy there in Seattle.
Likewise, you take care.
Thanks for joining us on Daily Matters today, a podcast from Clio. Rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Daily Matters is produced by Andrew Booth, Sam Rosenthal, and Derek Bolin, and hosted by yours truly, Jack Newton. Thanks also to Clio, the world's leading cloud-based legal technology provider, for supporting this podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Clio, please visit clio.com.